the most powerful designer drugs are the digital ones we use daily. And we get high off them. One touch, tap, like, scroll at a time. Just like tech creators want us to. Use digital without digital using you. Learn more at sync.ithra.com.
We acknowledge the traditional owners of country throughout Australia and recognise their continuing connection to land, waters and culture. We pay our respects to their elders past, present and emerging. Welcome to This Song Is Yours, a music podcast where we chat to a new guest each week, talk about their life and creative endeavours, and talk to them about some of the music they love. Our show works by chatting to our guests about music, but also getting them to make you a playlist of the songs they love. You can find the link to our playlist in the show notes. Welcome to episode 36. I'm your host, Simon Fink. Our guest today is Holy Holy. The indie rock duo, made up of Timothy Carroll and Oscar Dawson, have just released their first single of 2021, entitled How You Been, and it is textbook Holy Holy. In today's episode, we discuss an upcoming fourth record, smarter choices in songwriting, and the music of Run the Jewels and Lil Nas X. Here we go. Our guests today are one of Australia's most loved indie duos. They've had 3 top 20 records here in Australia and have begun releasing singles for their fourth record. Please welcome to This Song Is Yours, Tim and Oscar from Holy Holy. Good morning, boys.
Hey, Simon.
Hey, Simon. How you going?
I'm good, thank you. I'm good. How are you both?
Good. Yeah, good. We're at the end of a long journey today. Today is our last day in the studio of making our fourth album. So it's kind of a momentous little moment to catch us in, really.
That's very exciting. It does look like quite the setup that you have in there from what I can see. Is that a fireplace behind you?
Yep, that's right. We've got a crackling fireplace YouTube video going for the ambience.
It's very modern luxe. I like it.
Yeah. I always like to, when I get into because we're on tour all the time, whenever I get into a hotel, if I can co-opt the television and make it into a fireplace, and then I put that on and then play some music and really get into the vibe.
Yeah, I was just going to say, most of the times I've been in the studio, it's just a dark box with no windows or natural light. That is what my studio is like at the moment. Here we are in Dandenong in East Melbourne, and so sometimes putting the fireplace on, it just makes us sort of feel like we're in, like, I don't know, sort of like less of a cave or something like that, you know?
It's like a little chalet in the Alps.
It definitely does give off that vibe. I kind of thought that maybe was where you were today, if not in Melbourne or Tassie. Now, congratulations on the single. How You Been has been out for a week now. And in terms of the track itself, it is very much like a Holy Holy track. Like, it kind of ticks all the trademark Holy Holy requirements. And in terms of both musicality and lyrical content, where did the song kind of come from you guys?
We had this writing session. So we finished our last record, My Own Pool of Light, and there's always this kind of exciting moment when that project's done, and maybe there's still a bit of touring happening on that, but Oscar and I sort of lift our heads up, and then we start talking about, all right, what's this next record going to be? And we were chatting about various different goals and, things we'd maybe learnt from My Own Pool of Light, and things we'd learnt from some of the shows we'd been doing in between and so on. And so we had a few things we wanted to do, and we locked in like just a really initial, let's get together and try some ideas at this studio in Collingwood before the pandemic. And there we wrote like about 7 songs that day. There was just like a bit of, what I think it was the fact that there was no pressure, and we were ages away from having to actually release a record or anything like that. And so we were really just having fun and being free and just trying heaps of stuff. And Oscar was like sort of driving the studio that day in a way that I hadn't really experienced before, where we'd like open a song, work, throw ideas. And then once we kind of got a bit stuck in it, shut that, open a new song, work. And so we were just opening and closing songs all day. And then by the end of it, we were kind of a bit like, oh, not quite sure what we achieved there. And then like a month later, Oscar bounced all these ideas out, and I was like, oh my God, I can't believe how much we got done. So that we kind of, that was like really the body of this album. Like some of the key touchstones of this album happened that day, and this was one of those songs.
And it was obviously, in hindsight, we were so lucky in a way, because then the pandemic sort of hit not long after, and we live in different states. And so, I mean, even if we were both in Melbourne, where I live, we would have really struggled to get back together again, you know? So we were lucky we did that day. And then we had all this material that we could work on throughout the kind of lockdowns of 2020, via correspondence. Tim had his set up, and I have my set up, and musical setups, and Zoom obviously is a thing. So, yeah, we were able to just kind of keep working on this record throughout the lockdowns, which was great, really, I suppose. Yeah. Obviously, now we can get back together in person, and that's worth a lot, you know, to the musical process. But being able to have material to work on throughout the lockdowns I think we were really lucky for that to be the case.
Definitely. You guys, and please correct me if I'm wrong, did Holy Holy begin like before the pandemic, years and years ago? You guys were in different cities anyway. Were you kind of already well versed in the working remotely or working in different cities from one another?
Not really as much as you might think. Like we worked really collaboratively remotely on like all the nuts and bolts of the band, all the like, you know, strategic stuff and planning and stuff like that. But we actually had been mainly writing together. I would just fly from Tassie to Melbourne or wherever. I mean, Oscar does a lot of production work in the background between our sessions, but it actually took the pandemic for us to really do that in a meaningful way. Like, for example, until the pandemic, I only ever recorded straight into my MacBook using the mic, like the built-in mic, and just using GarageBand. Like I'd never got beyond that. The pandemic and the lockdowns, I got like a clone U87, and I got an Apollo interface, and I bought Logic Pro, and I like watched like hours and hours of all these YouTube tutorials, and so some of the songs that are on this album, like the demos of them, are kind of a result of me like staying up late and watching like a tute on how to build a drum beat, and then the next morning going like, right, okay, click, 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 like do everything that they did, and then so that was exciting. I think there's something special about like the naivety of like learning a new software or something that actually can lead to like something that has like a bit of a spark to it.
And I mean, I've sort of on what you were asking as well, Simon. I mean, I've played in bands where we've all been in the same city, you know, in the past, which was always Melbourne, I guess. And that can be great. You can get together and rehearse and make tunes together. But I think there's a certain complacency that can seep in there as well. Maybe one thing that we, as Holy Holy, as Tim and I have gotten good at, is making the most of our time together when we are together, because it might be on a weekend here or a day there, or, you know, a day before a run of shows starts, we might get together and write a song or do a rehearsal, and we've managed to be good at making the most of that time. And I think that what Tim was saying before about writing all those songs that one fateful day in Melbourne just before the pandemic hit was that we were like, well, we're here right now, you know. Tim was going to go back home, I suppose, the next day or whenever it was. So it's like, let's just make the most of it. Let's make hay while the sun is shining. And so that's something that we've gotten pretty good at, I think, you know, compared to other projects I've been involved with, at least.
That's good. That's cool. From those sessions where you were, as you said, kind of like opening it up, smashing it out, and then closing it, and then just kind of repeat. how many of those, I guess, what was the success rate of that kind of method? Like, can we expect to hear all of those songs on a forthcoming record, or
a good few of them?
We'd have to go back. So
it's a good few of them.
Believe Anything made it. Port Road, so our single that's already out, came from that session. Yeah, Stand Where I'm Standing. How You Been came out of that. Was there any others?
There's at least 4. There might be more. Yeah, it's pretty good. I mean, we've always tried to keep a high success rate to our songwriting sessions. And by that, I mean, sometimes you hear bands being interviewed or artists or you hear about their story of their record and they're like, oh, we wrote 50 songs for this record. We chose 10. And I'm like, why did you do that? What a weird thing to do. That's bloody, it's odd. Why did you write an extra 40 songs? That seems like an utter waste of time. And why did you persist writing songs that obviously weren't good enough to be on your record? So we've always done a thing where this is actually probably the first record where we have more surplus songs than we there's always been a few surplus songs on the records we've done in the past, but this one we've got more surplus songs.
Yeah, usually
but still not many.
We write 13 for an 11 kind of track album, but this one, for a range of reasons. I mean, I was smashing out a bunch of demos as I was teaching myself Logic, and we did do some writing sessions with other people. And out of those sessions, only one song made it. So there's other songs in those sessions that didn't make it. But we've got more on the cutting room floor this time than we've ever had before. I think we probably have written like maybe 20 or 25 songs for an 11.
Yeah. I mean, I think maybe sometimes when people say we wrote 50 songs for a 10-song album, maybe what they mean is they wrote like 10 songs and 40 kind of verses and a bit of chorus and a bit of dribble and just didn't finish them or something like that.
That makes sense.
Which does make sense.
Yeah.
What you're saying is in about 50 years, we won't see a holy like 50 disc box set of From the Vault or whatever.
Maybe a one disc. We could definitely do a one
From the Vault. Yeah. I recently signed my dad up for a birthday present to Neil Young's archives online. It's like a pretty comprehensive and pretty deep, like, sort of platform with bootlegs and old releases and stuff. And I'm just like, this is too much. I just want to hear the good stuff that he like got behind and released, you know? Do you know what I mean?
Exactly.
Yeah. Anyway.
Yeah. I agree with that. Sometimes you're really in the loveliest way sifting through some of the shit to get to some of the good parts of it.
Right. Yeah. Like it's like I don't want to watch all of Martin Scorsese's offcuts. Actually, I just want to watch the movies that they edited and released as a finished piece of material. You know.
Exactly. Agreed. Just before we mentioned Port Road, which is the single that was released previously to How You Been. And it is, while there's still a danceability about it, it does sonically sound slightly different from Holy Holy, almost like a little bit more of like an electro vibe to it. When you guys did go in to start recording for the fourth record, was there, I guess, an intention to have, I guess, open up the band's musical scope or kind of try different things?
Yes.
Yeah.
All right. Next question.
Yes, there is.
I think there's a few different like parts of the puzzle as to like what has motivated us to do certain things, but I actually think a thing that's maybe a big driving force is that as the band has gotten bigger, we're doing bigger shows and we're playing bigger stages and bigger festivals, and you start to just notice like some of the mechanics of songwriting and the way that they interact with the crowd, and you just know that like, I think sometimes songs are a bit like jokes and and songwriters are like comedians, and there's a certain like mechanics to a certain joke where you just know that every time it's going to land and it's going to get a laugh. And similarly with certain drum like BPMs and drum kind of like bass and drum and bass combinations that you just know are going to land with a crowd. And so we've sort of been starting off with our early records being kind of like guitar-y, kind of nostalgic kind of sounding releases, and we've sort of been moving towards it. And with this record we wanted to, as much as possible, like just lean into like making these big like euphoric kind of moments that would work really well live, and And so, at the core of it, we were like, okay, well, what does that mean and how do you do it? And, so we were doing things just like writing, for example, with certain like BPMs and certain like feelings as like the basis. So like 4 to the floor at like 125, and then trying to like, obviously we always want our music to still, be emotive and be authentic and be real, but you're just starting with that intention underneath it. And then it means when you get that combination of like, the music feeling great, but that sort of rhythm behind it, it can create the kind of music that we want to make at the moment.
And also I think the music we listen to, I mean, obviously there's a playlist that mainly Tim created for this very podcast. I'm not sure if we speak about that, but anyway, I looked through that list of songs and it's like, I'm not sure there's a single rock and roll song in there. Like it's just, I don't know. I mean, I'm constantly feeling like I'm running from my musical past. And either that, or it's just that the grass is greener on the other side, or some cliche like that. But we finished our last record and I'm like, okay, never want to hear it again. Don't want to ever play the songs. I just want to move on. Obviously I'm exaggerating a bit because I love playing those songs live. But the point I'm making is like, okay, next. What's next? Where are we going now? And let's sprint towards that. And I think again, this is an exaggeration, and it's going to sound a bit too calculated. But sometimes those live shows, I'd come off stage thinking of it as like a research trip, and it's like, okay, well, there's that section in that song that I love that we released on that record, and I can feel it not quite hitting, in the way that I want it to hit on the stage with the crowd.
Yeah.
And so I want to improve that, I want us to improve that. And so next time we go on stage, I don't feel that way. And that's a side to it. I am being more reductionist than we actually are, but I'm just sort of speaking in those terms to kind of get the point across.
Yeah. I tell you another like funny like example of like things that can influence us is like we did like a version for Triple J, and we've done different songs over the years. And the last one we did was Lord, Green Light. And so we'd be at these festivals like playing our songs, and the crowd are getting into it and so on. And then we're like, okay, now we're going to do this Lord song, and it's like, and then the beat drops on that, and the whole amphitheater is just like, and you're like, wow, like same band and same instrumentation and everything, but something about the combination of like the mechanics of that song. I mean, and perhaps it's a familiarity, but it was fun. That can really be illuminating as to like what's possible.
Yeah, you cannot help but notice, when you play a song like that live, you go, oh, okay, right, I see what's happening. Yeah,
and I think also like when I was younger, like came out of like a music scene where like pop was a bit of a dirty word, and like singles and stuff. Like I came out of a kind of folky, kind of like sort of Nick Cavey, Bill Callahan-y kind of inspired scene, and it took me a very long time to kind of maybe shed some of that culture and be more open-minded about pop music and like what's exciting and creative in those spaces as well.
I think that we've been talking to a lot of guests recently just about like, I guess almost the best word might be like an evolution of bands in terms of that these days, especially in the last 12 to 24 months, that really you can have a record that has like a folk track or like an ambient 16-minute track or whatever, and that it just kind of works these days, that more people are listening to everything instead of just, rock being rock and pop being pop or whatever.
Yeah, I'd agree with that.
I definitely agree with that. I do think that genres are, I think in my own mind, I respect why genres are used and valuable to people, but in my own mind, they are largely sort of made up words. In some sense, they're useful for playlists and radio stations and so on. But it's to me, it's a little bit of a crock, and we've seen really big artists do different, like quite different genres in their own lives. I'm talking like really big mainstream artists, like move around and do, whether it's Taylor Swift doing doing folklore or I was listening to the new Lil Nas X song, which he's done like country oriented pop and now sort of Latin oriented pop, and it's like it just doesn't matter. Do what you feel good about. Do what feels good. And the production also is so, like the literal sounds, the production elements on songs, it's so those definitions of what constitutes a genre are no longer really, I just don't see them as being applicable. You know, it might have been back in the day when I bought a Queen record. I'm not old enough to have bought them when Queen were around, but when I was a little kid, and it would say on the back of the record, you know, guitars, bass, drums, vocals, the personnel, and then it would say no synthesizers were used in the making of this record. Like it was a badge of honor or some sort, you know?
Did it really?
Yeah.
That's funny.
And nowadays it's like you're a rock band, even a metal band, you know, not all, but almost all genres. It's like, whatever, use a synth, program some beats, sound replace the drums, play it live, whatever, just get the sound across, the sound that you want, get it across. And it just, I feel like it doesn't matter. And so I feel increasingly like my desire is to ignore any trace of genre as best as possible. Although, you know, I do respect that can be difficult because sometimes people say, so what style of music do you play? And it's like, you know, it's good to have an answer.
Yeah,
it is good to have an answer.
I kind of say indie, which is a funny word because it's...
My dad works in B2B marketing. He came by my school for career day and said he was a big ROAS man. Then he told everyone how much he loved calculating his return on ad spend. My friends still laugh at me to this day.
Not everyone gets B2B, but with LinkedIn, you'll be able to reach people who do. Get a $100 credit on your next ad campaign. Go to linkedin.com/results to claim your credit. That's linkedin.com/results. Terms and conditions apply. LinkedIn, the place to be, to be.
Hey, I'm Ryan Reynolds. At Mint Mobile, we like to do the opposite of what Big Wireless does. They charge you a lot. We charge you a little. So naturally, when they announced they'd be raising their prices due to inflation, we decided to deflate our prices due to not hating you. That's right. We're cutting the price of Mint Unlimited from $30 a month to just $15 a month. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Because it says nothing about the sound, and it does. And if it's meant to be independent, then it's not even true of us. But anyway.
No, yeah, I don't even know what indie means. I mean, then people add a word after indie all the time now. It's like indie folk, indie pop, indie this, indie that.
Yeah,
it's like I don't know.
I think they definitely work in terms of maybe categorization in terms of like when you said you went to buy records, like it's handy to know if you're looking for a certain record, it's in a certain section. But other than that, I think, it doesn't really matter in terms of creating music these days.
Yeah, we've had a bit of a play. Like this album we're about to release is reasonable. Like there's a big like instrumental poem on there, and like an instrumental track with like a spoken word poem, and then there's like Port Road, which has its kind of feeling, and then there's like How You Been, which is sort of like a kind of poppy song, and there's all we're having a bit of fun on this record. And I think rather than like exactly what Oscar said is that the metric that we always measure our songs on is just kind of like how they make us feel. Like when we sit back and listen to them, like if they feel right, then we're happy to kind of have them represent us.
Yeah, definitely. The Port Road tour is I believe in the midst. I know it's been spaced out a little bit, but you guys have done some shows and you've got some shows left. How's it been being back on the road in terms of with the last year and being locked down and everything else? What's it like being back on tour?
Awesome.
We've been having so much fun.
I think it's great. Like obviously we're so lucky here in Australia to be able to do it. Obviously there's been a little lockdown here or there and some hiccups, and I feel for all the people who are pure live audio, live sound, or gig booking workers or venue owners, because it's so hard for them to plan, and constantly rescheduling gigs is difficult. But we've been able to play some, we've rescheduled some others, and we will play them, and it's been an amazing feeling kind of being able to get on stage and play in front of people. especially I guess we had around a year where we didn't play a show. I think something like that.
Almost exactly a year.
Yeah, it felt pretty emotional actually after playing. Our first show on was in Melbourne at the Forum, and it was because having not played in around a year, we did a bit of rehearsal and some sound checks, so I felt okay, but I didn't really know how it was going to go, and it just felt great.
Yeah, I agree. Like you could feel even though it was reduced capacity seated shows, which kind of like you would think would make the vibe like more reserved. You could feel that there was a similar emotion coming from the crowd of like, oh my God, it's so nice to be at a show again. And so, and like we've been very lucky because we've been around for a while now. Like we've released 3 full studio albums and an EP on top, and we're just about to release our 4th album. And so we've sort of built this fan base that have been listening to our music for years, and it means a lot to them. And so when we get to be together with our audience, it's really special. And Queen P is like a real hoot as well. She's like really fun backstage, and she's like touring the country so oftentimes when you're an opener on a tour, like, there's not that much money to do that. It's quite difficult. And so when we booked her, I was kind of thinking she might be like with a DJ and her or something, but arrived at the first show, she's got drums, keys, and 2 dancers and her. So she's got her like these 2 twin girls, Monica and Christina, and they're just like cutting sick on the stage, and like the crowd are going off, and she's just really fun. And like when the first time we did Port Road live, like I was kind of, because she hasn't done that many shows. She's sort of at the beginning of her career, and we've done a lot of collabs with new singers before, and usually like they take a while to come out of their shell. And so I was like, we'll be here, like don't worry, like blah, blah, blah. And she came out and she just like destroyed it. And I was like, oh my God, like I have to perform better so that I can keep up with the energy of Queen P. Like, so yeah, she's kind of been showing us how it's done, and it's been fun.
That's very cool. I was going to ask, I was going to mention Queen P and how she features on Port Road, but that sounds like she's killing it. Sounds like she's doing a very good job of it.
Yeah, we came across her through a friend who is a festival programmer who's a mate of mine. I was like, oh, who do you reckon we could try that with? And he was like, I saw Queen P at like a Triple R thing, and she was great. She just had really great energy, really good vibe with the crowd and stuff. And we reached out to her on Instagram. Just direct, which is nice, not like, it wasn't like label to label or manager to manager. It was literally just like, hey, like we're Holy Holy, like we've got this song. And I think I sent her the song in Instagram, and she was like, straight away, she was like, yeah, like I'd love to do it. It sounds great. It's nothing like I've done before, but she said something like, I'm like I'm dynamic. I can do anything. Like, let's do it. And it was so, we were like, oh great, like makes it really easy.
That's sick. That's awesome. Guys, would you be happy to talk about your playlist that you made?
Yeah.
Yeah,
have you listened to it, Simon?
I have, yes.
Or like listen to it with your eyes?
I listened to it with my eyes. I also listened to it. I knew some of them. There was a good maybe 6 or 7 that I have in my own catalogue, a few new ones that I discovered for the first time.
Okay, great.
It's funny that you mentioned Lil Nas X before, because it does feature on the playlist, and the playlist isn't mucking about. There's 1 or 2 quieter songs at the end, but most of it is in the theme of dancing and getting your body moving. It almost seems redundant now to ask this, but what made you put Lil Nas X on the playlist?
I'm intrigued as to why he stands out. I mean, again, I'm being ignorant here of genres and marketing probably, but what is it about him that stands out?
In terms of the playlist?
Yeah.
I think when looking at the playlist initially and getting it, receiving it, that song stood out the most, mainly because it does seem that at this stage in music in 2021 that there's almost like there's big songs and then there's like moments in the year, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I feel that the song itself is good, and as you said, like the production's fantastic. There's intricate little bits and pieces, and he is like really kind of trying different things artistically, but I feel like it's also a bigger moment as well outside of the song.
Yeah, I mean, I've probably read more about his release kind of marketing sort of approach than I have about the song itself, with those sneakers with the drop of blood in them.
The blood sneakers, yeah.
Which I find just fascinating, actually. And then, getting sort of, I don't know if they got sued or whatever it was by Nike, which I can't help but wonder if that's what they were kind of hoping for. And even if they were, cool. Because I think they sold them all and probably shipped them all, and then they got told to stop. So it's like, well, they're gone now. Which I find fascinating. But we were hanging out a couple of nights ago, and I was actually pulled up the song, and I was learning it on guitar, just because it has a bit of guitar in it. And I thought, this is a fun song to play. Like, I know that there's all this other stuff around the artist and around, again, as I say, the kind of newsworthy elements of the whole project and the sneakers and so on and so forth. But I was just playing the song on guitar, and I thought, this is a fun and a cool tune to play, and I'm really enjoying this. And so that was a part of the reason for putting it in there, is that sometimes it's nice to realize underneath or at the top of all of that, all of the big cultural stuff, there's a song, a little piece of music in there. And I was like, this is cool, because like, I don't know, I feel like pop, and I'm not sure what genre you call it, what genre one would call it. It feels like pop has been for a few years now in a really great place, actually, because when I was a little kid, and I think Tim said this earlier, pop was maybe a dirty word or a bad word or something like that. And I think that's being challenged retrospectively now too. We're seeing, 100%. We're seeing Britney Spears now being I suppose some of the cultural stuff around her life being reevaluated and criticised, which I think is great, actually, because outside of all the cultural stuff, she's got some awesome songs, I think, as well. Yeah. And like, we're seeing pop be reevaluated, and has been for some years. And so, there might have been a time where, some pop songs musically, chordally, harmonically were maybe a little, I don't know, more formulaic. But I play the Lil Nas X song, Montero, on my guitar, and I'm like, this is actually a cool piece of music. Like, it's nothing to do with what genre it is, its actual musical qualities, So I found that really enjoyable. And I love the cultural side in terms of the way the genres blend, as I said, like, it's kind of got a Latin influence to it rather than, he was, I think his previous banger was like a kind of country influence kind of pop tune, I just find it really interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Some of the other tracks that you've included on the playlist maybe run like a little bit more, not necessarily political, but have a little bit more to say than just, your pop song like I Love You or whatever. There's one track by Run the Jewels, there's another one by Anderson .Paak, both kind of touching on different political topics. Do you think that it's something that we could see or is it something that we might see in this fourth record, like a bit of a political or protest streak with Holy Holy?
I mean, that's that has definitely existed in past Holy Holy releases. Like, there's quite a lot of that kind of thing running through our work generally. And I sort of have a funny relationship with that at times, because sometimes it's really what I want to do, and then sometimes it's like I want to run away from that, and I want to just sort of exist in music as this kind of puzzle of like melody and rhythm and emotion and things, and I don't want to be like saying big things, but like, yeah, My Own Pool of Light, touched on a few different, there was one song about gender and about like my experience raising my daughter in this world, and like reading books to her and being kind of constantly disappointed, and like sometimes she'd go to bed and I'd throw the books in, because I had a fireplace in Tassie there, and I'd be burning the books at night because I was so kind of like pissed off at the way that the mums and dads were sort of and the characters were represented in the books and things like that. But on this record, I'd have to go through track by track and think about like what each of the songs is about. I feel like broadly this album I have lent lyrically, I have lent a little bit more into like this sort of more improvised lyrical approach, which I've done in the past, but usually I would go back and I would like re-engineer the lyrics to make them all make sense and all be kind of perfect little stanzas where you're like, oh, okay, I can follow the story. But this time I sometimes was doing that and going like, I actually just prefer this kind of collection of like images and ideas and thoughts and moments that you can kind of piece together, but it's less kind of like really direct as like this is what the song's story is. Yeah,
I mean, it's been an intensely political year for many different reasons, and a lot of that's been happening in the United States, but around the whole world it has been, I think. I mean, we have to not forget that almost every year is intensely political in one way or another, but it did feel like 2020 took things up a fair few notches, and for many good reasons. And I think that some of the stuff that Run the Jewels are sort of some of the issues they're examining in that song. I mean, I was saying to Tim, like, I think it's incredible. It's an amazing piece of music, and each individual on it, because it's got Zach De La Rocca and Pharrell Williams on it as well. They all contribute so much, but I just don't feel like I'm in any way, shape, or form qualified to comment in the way that they are on the things that they are commenting on, both as the person who I am with my background. I mean, also, some of their issues they're talking about. One of the lyrics is about the slave owners on the dollar bill. I mean, it's not like those issues are universal, but they are talking about them in an American context, and it's like, man, I'm just like an idiot, like who grew up in a middle class suburb of Melbourne, like a white dude. I don't know. I just feel like how could I contribute to that? I don't know. So, and I'm not sure. Maybe this past year has been so political. Maybe this music is an escape from that. I'm not sure. That's only time can tell.
Yeah, no. I think both. To address what you said, in both the sense of like that you can I think you can have like an appreciation of the music while also not knowing or being able to comment on your own background, if that makes sense, in terms of what they can say that's from their own lived experience, and while we can appreciate it, we can't comment on it. And then in terms of the other part of what you said, sometimes it is probably good to have music that isn't overtly political, so you can have an escape from some of the more exacerbated issues going on in the world.
But the other thing about those two tunes, like they've got a lot to say, and they're done really well, but they're also just as pieces of music. Both those songs, when I put them on, I just like, especially Lockdown, Anderson .Paak's Lockdown. I played that so much that all my friends and family were like, "All right, mate, like stop putting that song on everywhere you go," because there's something about the feeling of it. I was going to put the Silk Sonic song on, but I decided not to.
I was going to ask about Silk Sonic. Yeah, that was.
And I thought I wanted to put one of the dry cleaning songs on there, but I see that I must have like dragged it in and dragged it back out. Are you across that new dry cleaning release?
I'm actually not.
They're like they're new. I guess they're not new to me, but a British band with a kind of guitar-y three guitar, drums, bass, and then there's a poet who's just sort of doing spoken word over the release. It's sort of Idols adjacent music.
Oh yeah, that sounds very cool.
Yeah, it's interesting. Very lyrical.
As I mentioned, there was one or two quieter songs, on the playlist. Molly Lewis and I know I'm going to mispronounce this, Arouge Aftab.
Yeah.
How important is it for you, whether it be in making a playlist for yourself, for a friend, or in the context of an album? Is it for there to be balance in terms of, sometimes you do have your Run the Jewels, you've got Janelle Monáe, and then you've also got some little quieter moments as well.
I think that when we write songs, we have that. I think that happens without us really trying. Like all our records have like really intense songs and then moments where some other kind of type of beauty is explored. And to be honest, like I think one of the reasons why this playlist is like a bit banger heavy is that I was recently doing some prep for a DJ set, and so I was on the hunt for like new bangers. But really, to be honest, like most of the time I'm listening to like instrumental, like Ethiopian jazz or like that's why Mild Life like are on there. Like that's actually the music that I listen to most of all is instrumental world music or jazz.
Sorry, I just realised I laughed when you said that. I don't know why I laughed. I was just maybe the juxtaposition.
Yeah.
It was a bit weird. Sorry.
No, I get that. The world music and Doja Cat aren't usually in the same sentence together.
My wife and I often have, devotional Pakistani music on, or Hindi kind of. Sometimes Bollywood themes. From the music from the filmmaking scene over there, and so sometimes when someone says make a playlist, I often go, okay, playlist, yes, okay, it has to be a certain thing. And if I actually made a playlist of stuff I have on a lot, I don't know. That's my private stuff.
Yeah. Well, I don't know about like Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan. Maybe we should post. I'll add in that dry cleaning song, and I'll add in Nusrat Fateh Ali Khan to this playlist, just to add a bit more colour to it. But I also remember one year I listened so much to Oscar Peterson Trio that at the end of the year, his Spotify sends you like, this was your year in music, and it was all Oscar Peterson Trio, and everybody else was like, oh, I was listening to this and this, and I was like,
I don't have kids, but I've got a nephew who is just. And I've been saying for a number of years, rock and roll is dead, all this kind of crap. And then my nephew is born, and he's now 4, and I've never met a human that likes rock and roll as much as this kid. And it can't be dead. But either way, I let him have access. He jumps on my phone, or like I play songs for him on my phone. And so my end of year Spotify stats sometimes err on the side of all these bands that I wouldn't normally put on myself. Like, he just loves Akadaka and Foo Fighters, basically. It's just amazing. He just loves it. You just
get him into the chats.
Yeah, he probably love all that stuff. Yeah, and his eyes just change when he listens to it. He's like but it's amazing how pure as a child like his feelings are about music. He's like, no, don't like this. No, put that one on. Yep. And then you play I don't know, Thunderstruck or something, and he's like, yep.
The man knows what he likes. Yeah.
It's kind of a beautiful thing, I think, actually. But anyway, I was diverging from what we were talking about. I can't remember. Anyway, the balance in a playlist. I feel like kind of from what you. No. Sorry, I just interrupted you. But I was just going to say playlists have a purpose. I think that's the thing about playlists. I think they've got a purpose. You're communicating something to someone when you make a playlist, whether it's a cassette tape that you've painstakingly created for someone that you love, or a playlist that you send to someone because you're inspired by these songs for a purpose, or a DJ set list, or an album made by us. They have a purpose. They're not just music existing in isolation. They've got a context to them, I think. You're always communicating something, whether it's the communication you're trying to make is get up and dance, or the communication you're making is I want to please my nephew, or the communication is we want to talk about these songs because they're interesting to us on a podcast. I think there's always a purpose, and I think that's why sometimes you do really want balance, but sometimes you don't. I don't think you always want balance, like genre balance, if you're trying to get people to dance, there's a purpose to that list of songs, which is to get people moving, right? So does that kind of answer the question, or is that just a bunch of crap?
It 100%. No, not at all. It 100% answers the question, but also that was like a beautiful little wrap up of like the podcast as well. That was it's why we do this. So yeah, that was beautiful. Tim and Oscar, thank you very much for your time today. I do very much appreciate it. And the new single, How You Been, is out now, and we look forward to the forthcoming album.
Great.
Thanks, Simon.
With you.
Cheers.
And that's our show. A massive thank you to Tim and Oscar from Holy Holy. Their new single, How You Been, is out now. We've left links in the show notes if you'd like to listen to the track or buy a ticket to the Port Road tour. We also want to give a huge shout out to Suzy at Positive Feedback for helping out with today's interview. You can find a link to our Spotify playlist in the show notes, where you'll be able to listen to all of Holy Holy's picks. If you like this show, please subscribe wherever you get your pods and stay up to date when new episodes are released. We release new shows each Thursday and Friday morning, with guest playlists streaming on Spotify at the same time. You can follow the playlist profile on Spotify, and you can follow us on Instagram, Facebook, and TikTok. Until next week, cheers.